Good day. I'll be doing factorization today. Factorizing is simply an instruction for you to find factors. We did prime factorization in grade 8, and we'll just be continuing from that. You need to remember what a factor is. You need to remember what a product is. Remember, for you to get a product, you need to take two factors and multiply them together. That's what it is. When you take one factor and you multiply it with another factor, you will get a product. When you are asked to factorize, all that is required of you is to use the product and work backwards to find the factors. To factorize is simply an instruction to use the given product to find factors. For instance, if I ask you to prime factorize 12, now to prime factorize 12, I simply ask you to find prime factors of 12, which in this case will be 3 times 2 squared. That is what you did in grade 8. So it hasn't changed that much. It was still the same thing. Now we will start by factorizing, and I normally call it the mother of all factorization, which is taking out a common factor. So here we will simply find factors by taking out the common factor between the given terms. Before we even go deep into this, you also need to know what it means when we say a term is a term. Remember, terms can only be separated by plus or minus or and minus. Multiplication and division simply combine the terms and unifies them to be one term. Remember that, okay? Now let us look at this first example here, where we are asked to factorize 9x minus 12. You need to ask yourself, how many terms do we have? We've got two terms, which is 9x as well as negative 12. Okay, now we need to find the factors of 9 and the factors of 12. When it comes to integers, we simply find the factors of the given integers, which is 9 and 12. You will note that in the first term, your integer is 9, which is the coefficient of x. And in the second term, your integer is 12, which is just a constant 12. You need to find the factors of 9 and 12. What are they? The factors of 9 will be 1, 3, okay? And in this case, please note that when you find the factors of 9, you also need to take into account the factors of 12. And what are the factors of 12? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, right? Now, all you have to do now is to find the highest common factor between 12 as well as 9. What is the highest common factor between 12 as well as 9? The highest common factor between 12. Remember, when we say something is common, it means that we can find it in 12 and we can also find that factor in 9. The only factor that you can find in 12 and you can also find in 9 is 3. That is why when I chose the factors of 12, I chose 3 times 4. And obviously with the factors of 9, it will be 3 times 3. Obviously, I can't choose 1. I also can't choose 9 because those, first of all, 1 is not the highest common factor. Okay. And 9 is not even common between 12 and 9. That's why I can't even choose 9. That's why I'm only going with 3, which is a common factor. And we can agree that 3 is the highest common factor between 9x and 12. That is the highest factor that 9x and 12 have in common. I'm going to highlight that 3. Now, that 3, I will simply take it out as a common factor. When I take 3 out as a common factor in the first term, what will I be left with? I'll be left with 3x. In the second term, if I take 3 out as a common factor, what will I be left with? I will be left with 4. And note that the reason why we say the first term and the second term is because of that negative in between. When you take out a common factor of 3, please note that since we are dealing with a binomial, inside the bracket, you will still have the binomial. So as a first term, I'll be left with 3x. I'll still have minus. And in the second term, I'll be left with 4. And that's what factorization is. Now I have fully factorized. To factorize this, all I did was just to take out a common factor of 3. So I will end up having a monomial multiplied by a binomial. Now, to check if your answer is correct, you will simply multiply that monomial with a binomial. You will start by saying 3 times 3x and 3 times minus 4. It should take you back to the original product, which was 9x minus 12. Please note that it is not compulsory to check if the answer is correct. It is advisable to do so to make sure that the factors are correct. Please note that there is no mark allocation for checking the answer. Okay, let us look at this here. Try that out. Now, you will simply have to find the factors of 6 and 8, but you need to find the highest common factor between 6 and 8. What is it? Can it be 1? No, 1 is the lowest. Can it be 2? That is true. 2 can be the highest common factor. It is the highest factor that 6 and 8 have. Now, to check if that is the correct answer, you will need to list the factors of 6 and also list the factors of 8. And you will simply highlight the factors that 6 and 8 have in common. And you will realize that the highest factor that 6 and 8 have in common is 2. So take it out. I will first start by finding the factors of 6, multiplying them together, which is 2 times 3y. And the factors of 8 will be 2 times 4. You realize that 2 is mentioned in both terms, making it the common factor, and that is the highest common factor. Now, all I'm going to do is to take out the common factor. If I take out 2 in the first term, I'll be left with 3y. And I'll still have plus, but in the second term, if I take out 2 as a common factor, I'll be left with 4. So in brackets, I'll have 3y plus 4. And my common factor will be taken out of the bracket. I'm going to put it outside the bracket, and that will be 2. By putting brackets, please note that I've just factorized, and I have achieved what I'm instructed to do, which was to factorize. I'll have 2 factors. The first factor will be the 2 that I took out as a common factor, and the second factor will be the 3y plus 4 that I have left inside the bracket. So I end up having a monomial multiplied by a binomial. Okay. Here's another minute. Please factorize this. Now list the factors of 4 and also list the factors of 24. And now highlight the highest common factor. You'll realize that the factors of 4 will simply be 1, 2, and 4 itself. And the highest common factor that we have between 4 and 24 will simply be 4. And in this case, that is the highest factor that 4 and 24 have in common. I will simply take out that 4 as a common factor. First, I will simply highlight it. For me to get 4y, I'll have 4 times y. Then for me to get 24, I'll have 4 times 6. If I take out 4 as a common factor in this first term, what will I be left with? I'll be left with y. I will still have minus, but if I take out 4 in the second term, what will I be left with? I'll be left with 6. So outside the bracket, I'll have the common factor, which is 4. And inside the bracket, I'll have what is left, which will be y minus 6. Have I factorized? Yes, I have factorized by taking out a common factor of 4, and I end up having a monomial multiplied by a binomial. Okay. Another minute. Try this one out. You have to ask yourself first, how many terms do we have? How many terms do we have? It is 6y, the positive 8x, and then negative 12. Now, list the factors of 6, list the factors of 8, and list the factors of 12. And then highlight the common factors. Now, you'll realize that the common factor between all these 3 terms is 2. And 2 is the highest, and the lowest will have been 1. So we'll choose 2 as the highest common factor between all these 3 terms. Now, take it out. If I want 2 to be a factor in all these terms, in the first term, what must I multiply 2 with to get 6? With 3. In the second term, what must I multiply 2 with to get 8? It is 4. And what must I multiply 2 with to get 12? I'll have to multiply it with 6. Now, take out 2 as a common factor. In the first term, what will you be left with? You'll be left with 3y. In the second term, I will still have plus, but what will I be left with? I'll be left with plus 4x. In the third term, what will I be left with? You'll be left with 6. You will realize that the original product was a trinomial, and inside the bracket, you will be left with a trinomial. And the factor that you took out is a monomial. Therefore, you'll have a monomial multiplied with a trinomial. Okay, try this one quickly. We've got 3 terms, which is 5m minus 15y and plus 10. Which factor is common amongst all these 3 terms? 5 is common. In the first term, what must I multiply 5 with for me to get 5? With just 1, which is 1m. In the second term, what must I multiply 5 with to get 15? I must multiply it with 3y. And in the last term, what must I multiply 5 with to get 10? I must multiply it with 2. Now, all I'm going to do is to take that 5 out as a common factor. In the first term, I'll be left with m. In the second term, I'll be left with negative 3y. And in the last term, I'll be left with 2. Everything that is left, you put it in brackets and you put the common factor outside the bracket, you'll end up having a monomial multiplied by a trinomial. That should be a trinomial. It's a monomial multiplied by a trinomial. Okay. When it comes to variables, please note that you only take out the variable. It must be a common variable, so it must be the same variable. But when you're looking at the same variable, you only take out the variable as a common factor, only a variable with the highest common exponent. Let us look at this here, the example that I'm giving you here. The first term has x squared, the second term only has plus 8x. So you realize that we have a common variable here, which is x. But which one do we take out as a common factor? The first term has x squared, which is squared, and the second term has x to the exponent of 1. So in this case, x to the exponent of 1 will be the common variable, and that's what we will take out as a common factor. Now, since this is a common factor, what must I multiply x with in the first term for me to get x squared? You must multiply it with x. In the second term, what must I multiply x with for me to get that plus 8x? I must multiply it with 8. Now, if I take it out, please note in between we have plus, which is plus 8. If I take out x as a common factor, what will I be left with? Realize that in brackets, I will only be left with x plus 8 when I take out x as a common factor. And that will leave me with a monomial multiplied by binomial. Try this out just for a minute. You will realize here we have three terms, and in all those three terms, we don't have a common integer or a common number or a common factor, but you have a common variable as a common factor. Now, when it comes to what is that common variable, it is m. When it comes to the variables, you look for the variable with the highest exponent, and that highest exponent must be common amongst all the terms. Okay, 3 is the highest, but do we have 3 as an exponent in the second term? No, we have 2 as an exponent in the second term. Yes, there is 3 as an exponent in a third term, but the problem is that it is not common. It is there in the third term, but it is not there in the second term. Therefore, we need the highest common variable with the highest common exponent. And the highest common exponent here will be 2. Okay. In 3, there's 2 because you're going to have, for you to get that 3, you will have 2 plus 1. And for you to get the 4, you will have 2 plus 2. So 2 is the highest common exponent between m cubed, m squared, as well as m to the exponent of 4. So I'm simply going to take that m squared out as a common factor. All right. When I take it out, before I even take it out, I'm simply going to list the factors. What must I multiply with m squared for me to get m cubed? I must just multiply it by m. And what must I multiply with m squared for me to get 2m squared? I'll just have to multiply it by 2. And in the last one, what must I multiply with m squared for me to get m to the exponent of 4? I must multiply that with m squared. Now take out m squared as a common factor. In the first term, I'll be left with m. In the second term, I'll be left with minus 2. And in the last term, I'll be left with m squared. And that simply gives me 2 factors. And that will be a monomial multiplied by a trinomial. Now that is fully factorized. Okay, I've done most of this. Now, please try this out. And for the solutions, you will need to check the next video just on factorization. Please don't forget to subscribe and check the next videos, okay? Also hit that notification button so that you can get notifications whenever I post a new video. Also,